How are you, Ped?
I am fantastic. How are you?
Good, good, good. What are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today? Do you want a spoilered summary of what I project topics could be, or do you want to be surprised as we go along?
If you got stuff you want to do, I'm happy to be surprised.
Okay. Are you drinking any tea?
I don't have any tea right now, no.
Oh, interesting. What are you doing for vocal warm up?
Vocal warm up.
Vocal warm up.
I'm talking to you right now.
Sweet. I had a bit of a vocal moment, speaking of vocals and voices and such earlier this week. It was a notable experience. It's not one I'm particularly proud of.
What did you do?
So I had one of those mornings. If I'm going to be fair to the universe, it was probably a good chunk of my own doing. It's been very busy preparing for this trip and work and school committee and other things going on in life as the school year comes down with graduations and such. And so I left the house with like nothing that I needed. I ended up driving back like 2 or 3 times. And then I got messages from people I had to deal with. And I was so late on a day that I needed to be particularly early on. And as I'm driving, I just got so frustrated. I needed to vent, and I just screamed at the top of my lungs in my car. And I don't know if you can hear it, but I sound like I have a bit of a cold. It's because I hurt my voice when I scream.
Yeah, you do sound a little hoarse, yeah.
Yeah, so that was that one moment of just that blood-curdling cry into the void. And a little cause and effect consequence for me there. So, although it got me thinking about voice and how, as we're doing the podcast here, that is the tool of the trade, isn't it?
For the most part, yeah.
Yeah, using our voice. And you've mentioned that you like to drink a little bit of tea before we record, and and we sort of try informally to like talk about nothing too serious for the first 10 minutes or so as we warm up.
Yeah, yeah.
But I got a little interested in what different techniques there are specifically to hone one's voice, right? And in recording and such. So Tom, I have a bit of an exercise that I want you to partake in.
Oh dear, okay.
Okay, and I'm going to warn you, so I don't want to blindside you. It's a two different exercises, okay?
There'll be no singing.
No, there will be no singing. However, I do want to say, so one of these is kind of silly, not really that silly. It's sort of, a little frivolous. The second one is definitely silly. However, I'm going to ask for a little bit of indulgence, a little bit of trust, because I promise you that at the end of the exercise, I will reveal the source of where these exercises are coming from, and it's
All right.
good, professional, research-based. You'll like it. This isn't pedfluffyfluff.com, connect with the universe business. This is like good stuff. So
What's the worst that can happen? I can just cut it out afterwards.
right, exactly. And plus, it's the way I'm going to arrange this is a little bit a scientific experiment sort of method. So that should appeal to your sciencey part of yourself. Okay, so to start, just say this sentence, and I'll do it too. So we'll both do the experiment.
All right.
2-Bit Geeks is an amazing podcast that will change the world. That's our test sentence.
Okay. 2-Bit Geeks is an amazing podcast that will change the world.
Okay.
How do you like that?
Yeah, that's very good. It's very good. Very, very accurate. Okay. So now I want you to hum for say 5 or 10 seconds. And when you do, try to like position that hum in your lips, like almost so that like it tickles. So you're sort of physically locating it in your lips, like you can feel that vibration on your lip, like All right, so do that for like a few seconds. This is the somewhat frivolous task.
I don't know what you mean.
Oh, this is awesome. So my nefarious plan to do my software development and get plain sounds is working to perfection. Okay, that's good. Now the second thing, and I'll do it first just so you don't feel too silly, okay, is to meow like an annoying, loud, meowing cat. You can only have to do this for a few seconds. Like, meow, meow, meow. Give me one good meow, Tom. Okay, all right, that's probably the best I'm going to get out of it. Okay, now let's say that same sentence again. 2-Bit Geeks is an amazing podcast that will change the world.
2-Bit Geeks is an amazing podcast that will change the world.
And there you go. Okay, so the thing that we were trying to experiment with was, so when we speak, there's the concept of placing your voice forward. So this article that I'll send you later is from a trainer who works with NPR announcers and producers. This is why I thought you'd like it. About how to keep your voice forward. So basically, having the positioning of where your vocal is happening more resonant in the front of your face, essentially. So using your teeth and the hard palate of your sinus cavity and your whatnot area to amplify your voice, and so it makes it feel more resonant, which to a listener, it makes it feel more present, and therefore you're more connected, as opposed to having your voice stuck in the back of your throat. Right? And so these humming and meowing exercises are ways to train your voice to output at a further point in your face, in your resonating cavity of your head, so that translates to the recording.
Okay. Did you hear any difference in my 2 recitations?
My memory, in order to compare, I'd have to roll tape and do a little
tape, right?
I mean, when I do especially the humming technique, I can definitely feel a difference. Like if I try to consciously put my voice all the way forward, it's like this. Whereas if I try to consciously put my voice all the way back, it's like this, and it's the same distance from the microphone. So I can see how over time those unconscious placements of where you put your voice could have an effect on how resonant your voice becomes. So I just thought, is given the fact that we are, crafting, using our voice to craft this thing, I thought you would find that kind of neat.
Yeah, it reminds me of when I got a communications degree in college, which is kind of a bizarre thing to think about.
It is,
if you know me personally. But several of the requirements for the degree was I had to take a few voice training classes that were requirements for the degree. So I did a lot of those things back in school, as far as those exercises and those kinds of weird things to try to improve your articulation and stuff like that. I don't think a lot of it stuck with me, but right. I've had some experience with that in the past.
Yeah, with the school committee thing, because I speak publicly a lot now.
Yeah,
like our meetings are televised, so it's even a greater sort of degree. And we have microphones and such, and
they're televised.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. Don't be getting no links on me.
I don't think I get that channel anyway.
Yeah. But it is interesting how I've always thought about this when I watch somebody give a presentation, or this happened this morning when I went to another school graduation, and someone said a few words in a microphone, and then they had some slides of some pictures and stuff, and it's all cool and all that, but there's such a distinction between content and manner of presentation. And you can have absolutely amazing content, but if your manner of technical presentation is flawed, it really gums up the whole works, right?
Don't I know it? Yeah.
You can spend, not that I've ever done it, you can spend hundreds of hours putting together like amazing pictures into the slideshow. But if you leave the lights on and people can't see it, right, to a certain depth, they're not going to engage in it. You could have an amazing speech, but if the microphone sound isn't set correctly for the room, such that people can pay attention to it in a comfortable way, it really, really impacts. It's one of the principles I think about all the time when I do data visualization stuff, software and development for my work, which is there's the content of the data, but then there's how it's presented. It's such a big difference. But it's a real slow evolving process for me to have some clear thought in my head, and then to be able to articulate it in a way that everybody understands in a high sort of pressure, high visible environment.
Yeah, that's an amazing skill if people have that. I mean, we have the benefit of editing here. Try to clarify our blather.
Exactly.
I would never want to do this. I would never want to do a live podcast episode, because then the cat would be out of the bag about how bad we are at this. The
meowing would be right out of the bag, Tom.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. What if your our podcast gets really well known? Would you ever do a live podcast?
I would I would do everything in my power to avoid it.
Like there must be like podcast conferences and stuff, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
What if we were invited to do a live podcast?
Oh, I don't even want to think about that. I mean, public speaking is something that I think universally terrifies everyone, including the people who do it a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So that's not something I even want to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing for us to be doing this in our basements, but to have actually people out there looking at you.
Right.
Ugh, awful.
Yeah, with the televised meeting thing, I've found the best thing to do is to just focus on the people I'm talking to on the committee, right? The people on the board, and just completely forget about the fact that it's being recorded, which is actually kind of easy to do. There's not like these Mongo camera decks. They're very small cameras that are in the corner, so it's you can put them on your site. It's interesting. Maybe we should do a live stream of our recording, Tom. We should videotape our.
maybe if we ever do a live episode, I can just send you and some proxy for myself that'll stand in for me. No one will know the difference.
That's true. So I was thinking about voices a little bit, worrying that I had in my venting of my terrible day, if I had somehow risked my podcast future, but I'm thankful that I'll heal up.
Yep.
Yeah. So I was thinking about voice. I was also thinking about hands because you had a comment previous episode about learning cursive, and you were kind of bemoaning the fact that we don't teach cursive anymore.
Yeah.
And cursive, being a very intensive application of the amazing thing that is the hand, and then I was thinking about my relationship to skills in which I use my hand. So I'm left-handed, and so when I was growing up, at the time, left-handed was like, oh my gosh, like there's something wrong with you. We have to like throw you in the lake and see if you sink. Or
yeah, I remember those days.
the special scissors and
with the green handles that the weird kids used to have to use.
Like, I don't think I cut a piece of paper until I was 12. So as a result, and I can't really say this with full accuracy, but I don't think I was taught handwriting techniques all that well. As a result, I don't use all three fingers. So my handwriting is particularly terrible. But I do really enjoy free-form scripting, right? Like sort of printed, like flowery letters.
Yeah.
I also find myself, particularly when I'm trying to think through a spontaneous, exploring kind of topic, finding myself wanting to have something in my hand to sort of play around with, like fidgety kind of things. Not a fidget spinner, by the way, which
thank God,
which is apparently a thing. But yeah, so I was reading a little bit about the hand. The one thing I never realized about hands, Tom, do you know there's virtually no muscles in your hand?
Oh yeah, they're all the muscles that you use for almost everything in your hands are in your arms, and it's just connected by tendons.
Yeah, that's crazy. So it's like you have this like really complex puppet. This like apparently there's like 27 bones and a whole bunch of tendons that are all attached to different bones and such. And so you have controller muscles down at your wrist area. And so even though when I'm thinking, oh, I want to move my first finger, like in my mind's eye, I'm sending that intention. It's physically located in my finger, but really that signal is going to my wrist, and then it just moves it like that, which is pretty crazy that you have these little puppets, right? And the anthropologists say that the fact that your thumb is physically aligned in an oppositional pattern to the rest of your fingers, the opposable thumb, is what first allowed us to develop more complex tools, right? So it's like, oh, what distinguishes the Homo sapien, vehicle of consciousness from others? Well, obviously the brain is the most significant, but the hand is certainly a pretty big part of that, right?
Yeah, the brain and the hands are the two pieces of the puzzle that allow tools to be made.
Right, exactly. And like the fact that when you, like, I don't know if you ever noticed that, like when you cut your finger, it hurts like way more than it ought to.
Paper cuts are the worst.
Right. And again, apparently that the reason that is that there's there's such a concentration of nerves, particularly in your fingertips.
Oh, yeah.
As would make sense, because as you're exploring your environment and you're trying to pick up the most, data-rich observations, it's your fingers that are the sort of the scouts out into the first pass, right? And so you want those to be as sensitive as possible. So you have all this complexity, all this like engineering, all this evolution. And so if you don't develop something to do with it, then is that a loss? I mean, on the one hand, it's kind of sad that evolution spent all these millions of years, developing this, and then we're not using it. But for me, more the question of, should you learn something like cursive, like a musical instrument that requires a similar level of hand-eye coordination, like
touch typing.
Like touch typing, yes, exactly. I was just about to say that. Is there benefit to it? So then when I put my educator hat on, if I think, should you learn these skills, and is there a benefit? I kind of split it into two types. One is there a direct benefit of that skill? So touch typing, obviously, for as long as we have technology that has a QWERTY keyboard, is clearly a directly functional skill, right? It directly applies. But something like cursive, so if you're only using cursive to sign your name, then is it directly necessary for effectively living in the modern age? And I would say probably not, because it doesn't, in that strict definition of directly applicable utility.
Yeah. And that's the conclusion that more and more school systems are coming to, as we spoke about last time.
Yeah, although I would phrase it slightly differently. That's the necessity that more and more school systems are realizing they have to make. Like, it sort of gets into a larger issue, but essentially, like, school budgets are never really about what do you want to do versus not want to do. I mean, there's a little bit of that, but it's more like, given that you're operating in a resource constrained environment, right? You only have enough money and time to do so many things. What's a priority, and what can you cut out? So it's like, do we keep the hour a day for cursive instruction, or do we teach, this additional math? What's driving it, right? And so there's budget constraints, there's test driven impact to school curriculums, which is a whole nother thing.
Mm-hmm.
But so then the other, if you can't make a direct functional case, like, why do you need cursive? You're never going to use it. Well, we were just talking about, right? The brain and the hand. It takes an incredible amount of attention and skill and activation of both the brain and the hand in order to be able to write cursively effectively, right? I mean, it's lighting up areas of the brain. And like we were talking about music, music, and there's good scientific research to show that when you are playing a musical instrument, there's like 4 or 5 different types of activity that your brain is engaged in at the same time, and sort of this, like, from your ears to watching the music, you're reading it as it goes along, to the physical hand-eye coordination and anticipation and time and all that sort of engagement. And so it's like, okay, the vast majority of kids aren't never going to become professional viola players, for example. And yet, what benefit did that have for their mental evolution, for their consciousness evolution? Other than like, it was fun, it was engaging. What did that do for their neuroplasticity? Is this buzz term that some sort of floated around, right? Your ability to make connections and to light up different areas in the brain in a creative, kind of varying way. And that's sort of the argument I would make for those things. But it's a lot harder to make that argument in a resource constrained environment, right? Unless you have in a community that values those things.
Yeah, I mean, that's, as I mentioned before, I've been kind of bemoaning the fact that I've lost this skill that I did learn when I was younger, and I can't really write in cursive anymore, and I feel bad about that. And I think I want to try to regain that skill just for the sheer pleasure of it, just to be able to create something that's nice to look at.
Yeah.
Most people's printing these days, it's not that attractive compared to nice flowing cursive writing that we all learned way back when. I'd like to get that back again. So.
Can you not write in cursive at all?
I've lost a lot of that skill because it isn't needed in the modern world. Everything that I write is on a keyboard.
Right.
I very rarely have to write things by longhand, and when I do, I just do the same ugly looking printing that everyone else does these days.
Right. It is satisfying to be able to execute a higher level skill that your body is capable of. Like I used to play a little bit of tennis. I mean, I was never anything special, but I got decent at it to the point where I was better than a beginner. And it's much more satisfying to play a game when you've actually taken the time to master sort of the fundamental moves of the game, right? Like you play strategy and tactic kind of board games, right?
Oh yeah, another one of my oddball traits. Yep.
Yeah. I'm sure that for a game that you consider to be a high quality game, it's a more satisfying after you know all the basic moves, and now you can kind of
Exactly.
improvise a little bit with it. And you have a command.
You can enjoy the depth of the game.
Yeah. I think a lot of these things it's hard to think of them outside of a manual analog versus automated digital kind of transition. You know, when you ask yourself, oh well, why are we losing cursive? Well, because it's being replaced by automated writing creation, right? It's like why are kids losing the ability to ride a bike? Well, they're in an environment where they don't need to do that anymore. It's like, why are we losing the ability to write letters to each other? Well, we don't need to do that because it's automated. And so it's taking away the need. You know, pretty soon, my son just got a driver's license, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me wonder, is his generation the last that's going to, where the majority of kids will get their driver's license?
Yeah, that's a good point.
If driving, at some point, self-driving cars will become a reality.
They're already a reality. It's just a matter of whether they become critical mass enough that that's the skill of driving becomes superfluous.
Exactly. And driving is another activity like that requires a lot of parallel attention to different parts of your brain lighting up at the same time.
Yeah.
And being able to drive on a nice day and putting a good tune on and driving down the road, it's a satisfying experience, right? And yet, may become purposeless.
So, of all these skills that we learned as kids that are slowly becoming obsolete, what are they being replaced by in schools these days? I'm not a parent, so I don't really know what kids are learning in schools these days, but
right.
I would imagine you have some insight on that. They're not learning cursive. What are they learning instead?
So it's incredibly variable. Like what gets taught in school is unimaginably variable from town to town and state to state. And it's partly based on school philosophy.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is based on funding. And so many parts of the country and, some parts of our state as well are in such a budget crisis that when you talk about these sort of nice to haves, like, cursive and all that, those are the first things to, art, music, physical education, history, anything outside of the core, outside of math, English, science.
History is a nice to have?
So here's the thing is that, right?
That's unbelievable.
Exactly. So it comes down to what are the core academic skills that can be tested. There's another, one of the other big questions in education is how do you hold a school accountable to providing a proper baseline education to all its students while not tying its hands so strongly that that's all it's focused on. So like on the one hand, you don't want a public school that's irresponsible, right? And is not achieving a certain level of proficiency in, say, math and English, et cetera, by certain grade levels, right? They have an obligation to provide that. And so you need some way to say, are you meeting this expectation? And how do you measure that? That's a huge question that people grapple with. And yet you don't want it so teaching to the test, quote unquote, that it just becomes, drill and kill. You only go to school in order to pass the state examination, right? And what a kid needs and what they want to focus on, what's good for their personal education, is so different from student to student. So I would say in the ideal world, you're providing that base level foundation of sort of like what everybody needs to know, that sort of core, and then being able to layer in addition upon that additional skills. And it's not just skills. There's interesting intersections of values too. Like you mentioned history. Another complication in education with history is that it's really hard to talk about what happened without putting some sort of interpretation on it.
Oh, jeez.
Right? I mean, like World War II, just to take an easy example.
Yep.
Well, World War II might be an easy example in order to say, who was in the right, who was in the wrong. But something like the Vietnam War or like the Gulf War. So the Gulf War is what, over 25 years ago
Yep.
that started. So it's certainly appropriate to put that in a textbook and start talking about it in terms of recent history. But how do you approach that, right? And so that it takes on a political.
Well, you approach it the way you approach all history. You look at it objectively. If it's too recent, some people can't handle that because their view is obviously skewed. But maybe those recent subjects you just have to avoid.
Yeah, I've been really pleased with how teachers in our town approach it, which is you use it as an opportunity it's a really rich, engaging opportunity because kids get pretty into like current events to teach critical thinking.
Yes.
And this is a skill that can be applied across all the different areas. So science obviously is one really good example. But history is a really fertile ground for that because most people have some sort of subjective, emotional initial reaction to hot button historical events.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so it's an opportunity for the teacher to say, observe that reaction in yourself. Don't invalidate it, but observe it. Ask yourself why you think that. Place that on the shelf for a moment. Let's go through what history has to say, consider other points of view, and then come back to that. And so it sort of grows and evolves this idea that your point of view, even though it is part of the truth, isn't the truth. And that's something that is just from my observation, is something that has to be experienced again and again and again to be kind of become part of your second nature. You can't just sit somebody down and say, oh, so you're going into high school, you should consider other points of view. Okay, next. Right? So that's something that personally I would really value in terms of being a responsible member of society and building a good character and being a good human being on the planet. But try tying that to a test that the state or the federal government administers and then rates you and then determines funding based on that, right?
Yeah.
Or worse, teacher assessments, right?
Yeah, you can't get a lot of critical thinking done in a multiple choice test, can you?
Right. Yeah. So I think one of the challenges for a community that has values above and beyond just the basic reading, writing, arithmetic, is how do you provide these additional aspects of education and continue to sort of fund it and defend it in such a way that it stands up to these other pressures, because it's difficult given, the economic and political forces that are always floating above the ideal, the great experiment of public education. Yep. So dude, how are those peas doing?
Oh, I do have an update on the peas. Thanks for reminding me.
Okay, excellent.
The update is I have peas.
Oh, dude. How big are they?
They're not very big right now. But they just started popping out this week.
Awesome.
Just as a reminder, you had a few episodes back had encouraged me to plant some peas, which I have. I planted about 24 of them, which have since been growing, and they're now maybe the vines are about 3 or 4 feet high. They have flowers on them, and their little pea pods are starting to come out now.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I do have to report, though, I only have about half as many now that as when I started.
Uh-oh. Do we have an incident? Do we have an event?
We've been living in this house now, which is sort of out in the woods here for about 13 years. We get all kinds of different wildlife coming through.
It's cool.
But this summer is like the first time we've seen rabbits.
Wow.
And we have rabbits now and those rabbits ate half of my peas.
Dude. So, what is your protection scheme for your remaining peas?
Our protection scheme originally was a sort of a fence that was good enough to keep the larger animals out, but the little tiny bugger rabbits were able to get through. So now we got some new fencing to go around the bottom that has smaller gaps, so the rabbits can't get in now. Hopefully, so the remaining peas should hopefully make it to harvest.
Wow. Well, at least you feel good, that you supported the local fauna. That's cool. I think part of that is actually kind of a cool aspect of gardening. It's like you're asking the land to produce food for you. The land's taking a little bit back. It's it's your tithing out to the little bit of loss is cool.
Right.
So how high is the fence?
It's about 3 feet high.
Oh, okay. That's way.
I mean, the fence was originally built to keep the deer out, which is what we always see around here.
Oh, interesting.
But all of a sudden, a bunch of rabbits showed up this summer, and they found some nice veggies to eat.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I've only ever had a 1 foot fence, but it's been specifically to keep rabbits out. So
yeah. So now we have a smaller fence going around the outside. It's for the rabbits.
Did you ever set a webcam up and see them squeezing their way through the?
No, but I saw one of them escaping when I came over to the peas one day. And
really, caught in the act.
Caught in the act. Yep. And he dove out through the fence and ran away. I shook my fist at him like Farmer McGregor.
Oh yeah, totally. Did you find a little button in the fence?
So
that's cool.
That's just another addition to our wildlife menagerie we have here, constantly going around.
Right. Look at you living in a wildlife menagerie. How lucky is that?
We had a raccoon on the porch the other day too, eating out of the bird feeders. He was munching away out there. I came out here like 5 a.m. He was out there on the deck eating from the bird feeder.
Just like on your deck.
Like, yeah, he was just taking handfuls of sunflower seeds and stuffing them in his mouth. I came over to the window, I just waved at him and say, what are you doing? And he looked at me and was like, oh, you don't want me to be here. Okay, I'll go. He had that look about him like he was annoyed that I caught him.
Right.
So he just climbed down off the deck and then went over to the neighbor's house where they had bird feeders as well.
Raccoons are pretty amazing. They have some pretty amazing hands, speaking of hands.
They do.
There's some pretty great videos of raccoons doing some pretty sophisticated, coordinated attacks on garbage cans and such.
Yeah. I mean, most of the animals, when you catch in the act, they run away like the rabbits, but the raccoon was just like, oh, come on, you're going to make me run away? Fine.
Right. You're not doing a really good job of being an intimidating human, Tom.
Yeah.
Step it up there. I've heard of these stories of, so you got the raccoons eating from your bird feeders that you can, if you feed a crow and you do it consistently, they'll start to bring things to you.
Oh yeah, I've seen that a few times. Yeah.
It's like they're offering or they're tithing to you, like little buttons and pins and.
Yeah, we have a few crows that hang around the house here that we see every day. I haven't tried feeding them yet, but
you should totally do that.
I mean, yeah, they're really intelligent. They're kind of creepy though too. They kind of just watch you as you're walking around.
Right. I'm pretty anxious. I shouldn't say anxious. I'm looking forward to seeing a fair bit of wildlife on our upcoming camping trip. We're going to be staying for a few days in Yellowstone, and there's a ton of elk and moose and eagles and bears. So looking forward to that. A little bit more of a connection there. Seeing them in their habitat.
When I went to Yellowstone, we're on one of the trails, hiking trails, and as we came through this field, straddling the trail on both sides was an entire herd of bison.
Nice.
So we were like, okay, what do we do? We can't go through the trail because they're smack dab in the middle of the trail. So we had to take a real roundabout route to try to go off to the side and then come back on the trail again. But because those things are big. Those are big animals.
Yes.
You don't want to get close to them, even if they look cute and placid.
Right.
They can turn on you quickly. So
bison warning from Two Big Geeks.
So look out for them when you get there.
Oh, I'm more, if I run into an animal, I'm more worried about grizzlies than I am bison.
Hey, bison can mess you up too.
Yeah, what would they want to though? They're like chill vegetarian cool. Right?
All right. Good luck.
So you have cats, right? I take it from your very accurate meowing earlier.
Yes, we have cats. We have 3 cats.
Are you any desire to expand your internal animal menagerie, or do you like to keep the wildlife primarily outside the premises?
Yeah, I like to keep them outside. Unfortunately, they do come inside.
Not just the raccoons?
Not just the. No, actually, in the last week, we've had a number of chipmunks inside the house.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I may have understated how much you're failing to scare the animals away. Like, does your wife think it's cute? Like when they come in and
no, it's really annoying. But so like I said, we have 3 cats, right? They are indoor cats, but they do go outside with an asterisk because we have an outside fenced in cat yard that they can go out into and like be interacting with nature and lie in the sun and stuff like that. But they're fenced in both on the sides and on the top.
Okay.
So they can go out there through a cat flap, and whenever they want.
Like a prison yard.
Yes. So they're safe from the wild animals, right? And indoor cats will be healthier and live longer because there's no danger of them getting hit by cars or eaten up by coyotes. But they still get to go outside and feel like they're cats. Unfortunately, the drawback to that is that the little tiny animals that can get into the cat yard get caught by the cats, who are just natural predators. And so sometimes they're so happy with their catches, they bring them back in the house again.
So you get dead animals in your house.
We get dead animals, but more annoyingly, we get live animals in the house too.
Oh, right, like slightly injured, really scared alive animals.
Yes, so it's it's probably a little embarrassing to talk about that, but we had a few chipmunks in the house, but we do our level best to rescue them and get them out again. So, which usually involves chasing them around the house. we have a little wicker basket that we use to trap animals in.
Oh, nice! You have a chipmunk basket, like specifically for the purpose.
Yeah.
Do you have a spider cup, by the way?
No, I like to leave the spiders alone. They're doing their job. I don't have a problem with spiders. Chipmunks, that's another story. We usually have to catch them and try to get them outside again.
Oh, so if you see a spider in your house, you won't kill it?
I won't kill it, no.
No, so like if I see a spider that's like definitely not having a good time in my house, like it's caught like in the bathroom or something, then we have a spider cup and take the spider outside. It's so easy. I was talking about this to one of my friends the other day. It's like, it's such a better feeling to see something that's alive and then to put it in a better place than it is to destroy it for your own convenience.
I agree. So, spiders keep the other pests out, I don't have a problem with spiders.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of spiders, actually.
When the webs are getting out of control, then you have to vacuum them up, I guess. But if they're just crawling around, I don't mind. As long as they're not crawling all over me. And I suppose there's the urban legend of how many spiders you swallow during the course of the year just by sleeping.
Oh, that's definitely a future 3-hour topic for us. How many spiders do you eat? I'm going to link that, man.
But anyway, we had a recent spate of chipmunks, but we rescued all of them and got them outside again, and scolded the cat who caught them.
Now, did they say that cats do that because? Is this true? I might have to Snopes this. That cats think that humans are actually just big stupid cats, and that we'll starve unless they provide for us as part of the pack kind of mentality.
Yeah, that sounds fishy to me.
Seems apocryphal to you, does it?
Yeah, I think they're just doing what they naturally do.
But why do they bring it? Why do they bother bringing it to us though?
Well, they don't necessarily bring it to you. They're just bringing it home.
Okay, so my cats leave it on the doorstep. My cat has left it on the doorstep mostly.
Yeah, you have an outside cat. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think they're bringing it to you. I think they're just bringing it back to their home.
Oh, really?
But I could be wrong. Snopes it.
I got to get on that. So you do your level best.
Yeah. So we had a little chipmunk catching session in the kitchen the other day, where my wife was at one end of the kitchen with the wicker basket, and I was at the other end with the broom.
Oh, that's fantastic!
So I drove the chipmunk to the other end of the kitchen, and she snatched it up in the basket. It was a nice shot. It was a goal.
Well, you sound fairly experienced, so
we have done it more than we'd like to admit. So, what do you think about that Han Solo news?
Yeah, so they lost their current directors,
plural.
Directors, and the Happy Days dude is going to be directing it now.
Yes, Ron Howard has taken over directing of the Han Solo movie.
So you are more the film Buffyanato than I am, Tom.
Yeah.
What is your... So first of all, what's your initial take on Ron Howard? Do you like his films?
Ron Howard is a very competent film director.
Okay.
But that's what you get. You know what you're going to get when you get a Ron Howard film. There's no surprises there. It's comes off the assembly line exactly the way the customer wants it.
What are some examples of that would be well known?
The Dan Brown movies, the Da Vinci Code movies.
Oh, Da Vinci Code. Oh, okay.
But he doesn't make stinkers. He doesn't make great movies either. He makes made to order, perfectly fine, average Hollywood movies by the book. He's a professional film director.
Right.
Whether that fits with what we want from Star Wars, he looks like he's coming in as more of as a cleanup artist to rescue what previous directors had put together and put it into a form that is acceptable by a corporation. Yeah.
So the way I read it was because of the stage of the filming process. It's less of a. So this is, it's obviously resonant of Rogue One, right? Where it was almost done, and then they brought a different person at the end who added a bunch of scenes, basically the third act.
Yeah.
And altered the tone, and so we got the uneven product that was Rogue One.
I think it looks like we're getting the same thing with Han Solo now.
Well, but from what I understand, though, they were just at the beginning of filming, so they're going to have to re-edit and reshoot some stuff. But this isn't like they were about to wrap it up and OMG, we have a problem. This was
they were well into it.
Really? I read that they sort of started out. They knew that there was some level of, what do they call it? Creative difference between the directors and the writer. So this is the same writer who produced the script for Raiders and for Empire.
Lawrence Kasdan. Yeah, I'm sure it's a good script. And Conflict here is the directors.
So Empire was obviously amazing, right?
Yeah.
In the Pantheon, and Raiders was also fantastic. So if the previous directors were in creative conflict with that dude, isn't that kind of a good thing that they're gone?
Yeah, I think it's a little late in the game for this change to happen. I mean, they've been filming for months on this film.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. So, more broadly speaking, this kind of move does not surprise me from a global corporation that has billions invested in Star Wars. Plus, so Rogue One, right? For all of the criticism that we gave it and that other hardcore, quote unquote, Star Wars fans gave it, made a mint globally. Yeah. I mean, it was
successful, yeah.
In terms of a business product, it was a runaway success. So I think that kind of underscored to Disney that it doesn't have to be a work of art in order to be an enormously valuable resource to the company. And so they're probably looking at it as kind of a risk-reward thing of okay, you could hand the reins off to some creative, brilliant director. And who knows if this pair was actually going down that road. But if you do that, higher reward maybe for making a masterpiece, but certainly higher risk, right? It's why would they? It really raises the question in Hollywood: can you actually make a mass-marketed movie that is its real own movie, right? That is a unique and quality statement of filmking. Yeah. It kind of seems like you can't.
No. And with the choice of Ron Howard, they are absolutely playing it safe to try to get what they can out of this mess. I mean, Howard is the consummate company man. He's not going to do anything that they didn't expect.
Right. Well, we will see.
Yep.
Well, we'll give them our money.
Yeah, I'll watch it, but I'm getting a bad feeling about it. Just like all the rumors we're hearing before Rogue One came out about what a mess it was. We're starting to hear that about this movie now.
Right. Well, hopefully it's good. Keep your fingers crossed.
Yep.
We have some other big sci-fi things coming out this year. I know that we did not include our Guardians of the Galaxy 2 review last time. That was probably because it was not too
interesting.
I was going to say favorable review, but yes, interesting. But yeah, we have the next installment of another Harrison Ford deal,
Blade Runner,
space thing on. Yes, Blade Runner coming up, which hopefully is good. Mm-hmm. That's the Arrival director, Denis Villeneuve.
Villeneuve.
So. I'm leaving the French to you, man.
Merci.
De nada.
This episode of Two Big Geeks was brought to you by our amazing patrons. If you would like to support the podcast, look us up on patreon.com and become a patron today. We thank you for your support.